Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's AI Dojo podcast brought to you by the AI ROI Association. I would like to welcome my co host, Mr. Steve Cunningham, the founder of the AI ROI Association, and I'm Jackie Schwabe, the head of operations. This is going to be a fun and exciting podcast. I'm really excited about it because each week we're going to come to the dojo and we're going to pull back the curtain on how we at the AI ROI Association actually use AI every day inside of our business. And I wanted to be clear, it's not just highlights, it's not theory, but like real conversations, real decisions, real trade-offs between what I would say Steve is our founder and he's strategic and he's innovative. And I'm like, how do we get it done? Let's make sure it works. And so there's a lot of push and pull into actually getting AI to really work within inside an organization. AI moves fast. And right now, it might be moving faster than most organizations or people can comfortably absorb. So, what we do is show you how we use AI every single day across strategy, ops, product support, consulting. And this podcast is going to exist to show you how that really works in practice. That means you're going to hear what we built, what we broke, what we debated, and what we changed. And you'll hear how AI shows up differently for individuals versus organizations, how it impacts change management, how it impacts human cognition and decision making, and what it takes to move from experimentation to sustainable adoption. So, today's episode, we're starting with what's ahead for the next quarter, particularly around AI ROI and how we're evolving our approach with champions, consultants, and teams. And we're going to share some of the insights from our past week, including what we learned around AI ROI training, what's coming up next, and what our org is going to be doing. So if you're building with AI, trying to figure out how to do it, and you're really excited in getting it to work for you, then this is the right place for you. So welcome to the dojo. So hi, Steve. How you doing today?
I am doing good. Good. What are
Excellent.
we? January 6th. We got back
January
to the
6th.
office yesterday and we're already running 1,000 miles an hour. So yeah, exciting times and glad to be back.
I'm excited to be back as well. Um, I'm actually really excited because we just started some of our planning for the next quarter inside our organization, and I'm a nerd, so I like to plan. And so one of the things I thought was really insightful was how we think about ROI and AI. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit to the audience to give them kind of a primer for what's the difference between just like implementing AI and talking about AI as it relates to ROI.
Yeah, I think so. I want to take a quick step back to like the end of last year because this something important happened in November, December that super important for getting ROI out of AI. So there was this study done by OpenAI, and I can't remember when it was. It was somewhere in the summer, I think, of 25, where they looked at all of the different or not all of those, some of the knowledge worker roles in the economy. I think there was like 40 something, maybe 50 something. They deconstructed those roles. They took the bucket of tasks for each one of those knowledge workers, and they did an experiment. It was, can AI, how does AI do this task versus a subject matter expert? So they had the AI do one deliverable. They had a real world subject matter expert who I think the average was 14 years of experience in that role do that deliverable. And then they had a different subject matter expert do like a blind taste test, and they would see who did the task better. So in 2024, the model that was tested would have tied or won 12% of the time. The models that were in mid 2025 tied or won 47% of the time. And then they redid that study after they released ChatGPT 5.2, which was in, I believe, December. may have been late November. All of this stuff kind of happened over November, December, where now the models are somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% win rate against a real world subject matter expert, which holds a whole bunch of implications for getting ROI out of AI. And specifically, we've gone from a world where there's a couple of, I know this is like a long rambly thing for the beginning of our first podcast, but I think this is kind of like the meta context for everything that we're going to talk about, where the if you think about, if something wins or ties 12% of the time, the AI can produce things. Everybody knows AI can do things faster, but it does it at a lesser quality than a subject matter expert, which just means it produces more crap in essence. So there's a lot of rework that needs to happen in order to get something to a subject matter expert level, which is how most people experienced AI over the last couple of years. It's like it does some good things, but I have to fix almost everything that comes out of it. So the experience of it is it makes me slower overall. Then the second thing that to realize is that once you cross the subject matter expert level, there's no more rework required. It actually does it in a finished state. So that means a whole bunch of things, but mostly that the AI is now producing quality work at a speed that a human can't match. The last thing to point out is that the experiments are when the win rates are tested on when the AI has all of the context in order to do the job well. And most people give AI no context to do the job well because it feels like they just want the answer and humans are lazy. There's a whole bunch of reasons psychologically why that's true. But now, if you give the AI all the context it needs to do the job well, it does it at a subject matter expert level or higher, and it does it somewhere in the neighborhood between 10 and 100 times faster than a subject matter expert can do it, which just completely changes everything. And so that's why I think, we've thought about doing a podcast for a long time, and like now I think that this is the time to do it, is because we are, even just over the last month, starting to move much faster in our operations, and things that felt difficult to do before are now getting very easy. And so I'm really excited to like dive into the weeds and talk about all the things that we're actually doing inside of our business, because I think it will help people understand that this can be far easier than you imagine. And I think that's the thing I'm most excited about, is how can we talk about getting the weeds in this stuff, but then also simplify these concepts for folks so that they can start using it productively in their businesses as well. I forgot
Thank
the
you.
question you asked. I just was rambling on so long.
No, I think that's great. So one of the things what you gave as a kind of intro is like how we've evolved, a little bit of how we've evolved from, I don't know, the last couple of years until we are now. But like I would say one really interesting thing from yesterday to today, like this is how fast things move, right? And um yesterday we had a conversation about context. We're like the next thing we want to make sure that we teach and that we do within our organization is ensure that we have enough context to our processes. So I think it's like one step back, which is where we have to help people, and that's part of what we do, is learn how to interact with the AI to create the processes and create the SOPs. But we found out right through trial and error that the processes were better and better and better when we have more context. Um, and then literally after having that conversation yesterday, you went off and were like, based on some of my operational frustrating comments, where I was like, yeah, but if it's this fast, how are we going to actually do it? Like, I'm a human, I can only go so fast. That we actually need to teach people how to build artifacts that can be used by the processes with a right context. And if we don't do all of those things, this like imaginary future people are talking about of AI agents, it can't exist, because then every single company would be a generic hallucination from AI with all of these agents with no context, and all the companies would be the same. So literally from yesterday till today, the like solidifying a better architected artifact that we could then use to generate searchable context evolved since yesterday. But what I think is funny about that is we are doing it. Like we start doing stuff every day, and then we come back and like describe how we had to do it to make it work. Like yesterday, we didn't have this concept of, maybe you did in your head, but this full idea of an artifact and context. We just do it. And I think that because we're doing it and now we're articulating it, we things break. Right. Like that's where even the artifact part came in, was me going, well, Steve, what about this? And what about this? And I can't move that fast. And I have to operationalize all of this. And it's not that easy. And but it is, once we like codify it, like put it into a vernacular people can understand. So I think that's what's interesting for me, is between, yeah, literally yesterday and today, solidified a concept. I don't know like the right word to say that, but like made something we're doing something that other people can repeat.
Yeah. Let me I'll share my screen
Great.
and
Yeah,
I
that'd
want to
be
walk
wonderful.
through like what happened yesterday because I think it'll be helpful. So, um we're in the middle of launching a new offer for our AI ROI association, and we have a bunch of training. And we have, in the past, we've had like one specific training around process engineering, and we've called that different things, but it's in essence like how do you build processes with AI? Like, what are the steps to go through in order to use AI productively? And one of the things that we learned in the end of last year was that context engineering is really important, and it's been a topic in AI for like the last year, but mostly when people talk about context engineering, they're talking about making sure the AI has enough context window to make good decisions. And there's a lot of technical things that most people are talking about when they talk about context engineering. When we're talking about context engineering, we're talking about like what does the business do? What is your strategy? What is your pricing? What are your who are your competitors and all the things that what are your core values? All there's a whole bunch of things that would impact how you use AI in a workflow or with an agent, let's say. And so that becomes really important. And my experience has been the more context you give, the better. So that was a thing. And yesterday we were talking about this idea, and I came to our meeting for our strategy. Like it wasn't really a strategy session. It was just everybody's back on January 5th. So let's create a plan for the quarter. And Marissa on our team was like, I think we should cover at least some of our targets for the quarter. And I was like, well, it's 20 minutes before the meeting. Like how the heck am I gonna pull that together? But because I'm using AI, I literally pulled together just by opening up my AI and speaking to it with a tool called Whisper, which you got today, and or you got over the break or whatever, and you're now using it productively. And just started talking, and like these are some of the things we're focusing on for the quarter. Context engineering. We're releasing this black belt, and then we had a conversation, you and I, and then one of the things we realized during that meeting is the ability to produce artifacts like digital HTML plus JavaScript plus CSS, and a whole bunch of other tech stuff that I don't really understand. You can now build artifacts with. Like this website was built yesterday by me speaking to my AI and iterating on it until it did exactly what I wanted to do. And so the thing that most like context engineering can be hard, except this is a whole bunch of code. And this code is very structured and readable by an AI. So if I was doing this well, and I just started doing this today, like creating folders so that the AI can go in and read these things, is because I spent way too much time re-explaining to the AI like exactly what our business is. It's really frustrating. I suffer through it because I am committed to making the everything that we do work, but it's frustrating. So once I start dumping the code that sits behind this website that I built with AI into the AI, it now never forgets. What are we doing? And there's all sorts of really cool things that you can build that you previously wouldn't be able to build before. So I built this page yesterday. I wrote a book on for consultants. So this was all built by me with AI. Again, this is all context that the AI can use. You can build all these amazing interactive artifacts, which previously would just be like a toy, or you would have to pay somebody an incredible amount of money to do this, so you would never do it. But you could do visualizations like this for your SOPs as an example. And so there's so many things that you could do with AI that you previously couldn't do. And for me, the big insight is stop sharing my screen. All of that, like while you're using AI to build these artifacts, which are end deliverables, then becomes the context for the AI to think over. And that just starts this huge flywheel effect of enabling everybody to start using AI way more productively than they did before. So the artifact engineering part of it in the inside was before December, before the release of ChatGPT 5.2, Claude Opus 4.5, and Gemini 3, mostly the UI stuff sucked. That was one of the big things that happened. And so you couldn't make something that looked nice that would be like production ready. That ship has sailed. The AI does things at a production ready design aesthetic, for lack of a better term, such that the likelihood that we ever need a front end developer ever again is close to zero. Like that just need just goes away. I now just make it myself, and so and in the making is context. So I'm trying to connect a couple of those dots there, but that's sort of the conversation that we had literally yesterday, today, and
Smart. Yeah,
that is literally how fast these things move. That was 24 hours.
yeah, exactly. So I thought I'd make I just wanted to drive home a point that you talked about around context and even the context being relevant for agents. So I was an executive um, ICF coach, or am an executive ICF coach, and for a while I had quite a few larger SaaS company IT clients. And one of the frustrating or difficult things in my little human brain was they would like prep me before I started meeting with the executives with the context around the organization. And like one organization I worked with, they were like radical candor was one of their baselines, and they had this core set of values. And they wanted to make sure, like every time I met with these executives, that we talked about their OKRs, specifically their goals, that we wrapped it in a radical candor sort of feedback loop. And it was piles of PowerPoints that I, as a one person, had to read, digest, and then make sure when I was showing up in this conversation, filtered everything through that context. And that might not have been crazy, but it was if it were one client. But at one point, I had 40 different clients and 40 different sets of values and 40 different, right, their OKRs for their company, and then the OKRs for their business, and then there was their department, and then there was like their personal ones. And while I was pretty good at my job, and thank goodness coaching is a lot more about doing really good with questions and not necessarily having all of the answers, that was exhausting. It was like a huge amount of cognitive overhead for me. Also for the executive, like trying to make sure that every idea or decision they made, they did through this large filter, like all these filters. Um, and then the question that had come up for me, and I think we had chatted about this right before the break, was like, well, how do I get like those values and the idea of radical candor, and that this department has this one really obscure specific goal? Like, how do you get that into the agents? It was already hard enough to get it into the humans. right? And if we talk about this idea that like there will be more and more agents and leaders will have to manage people and manage agents, it becomes astronomically important that the context, right, of that company's values and, mission, vision, values, and all that stuff that is already in a bunch of PowerPoints that aren't readable necessarily by agent somehow have to be put together and readable by an agent. Otherwise, those agents don't operate within the construct of that company's like values and ethos and mission and purpose for being. And I think for me, that was a big takeaway was just one client. It was like 10 hours of just reading, not absorbing, right? Not having at the top of my mind, just to ask them good questions when they were planning. And that was before I was also a software developer for a really long time. I couldn't even imagine trying to put all that into software. And you put it all in context for our business so that I don't have to have that all at the top of my mind. And I think that like that's a big point and I also think a big reason why implementations right now seem to be failing for a lot of organizations because they're skipping the hard work, which is the context and searchable artifacts, right? That the agent and the people can easily access.
Yeah, there is a famous study that's, I forget the number, is like 95% of all AI implementations fail and blah blah blah, which is a bad study, and there's a bunch of reasons why it's nonsense. And the end result was, well, you need to actually just train your people how to use AI well, is how it works, instead of a top down, let's replace our customer service department kind of thing. So I think people get lost in the weeds on that. But I do think there's a huge distinction is like pre AI tipping point. By that I mean November, December 2025. It was actually really hard to do this well. It was very like the models made mistakes. They still hallucinate, but that's getting lower and lower and lower. But there was this gap between the work that you would expect from a subject matter expert and the work that the AI produces, even if you gave the AI all the context. So it was hard, and then and that's why prompt engineering was so important, and that's why all you had to do all these little tricks in order to make the thing work well. Um, but now we've gone beyond that point, and now all of a sudden everything is unlocked. And I think that's the shift that most people need to make, is like it now really is about the context. The AI tools are capable of subject matter expert level work in almost everything, not everything. So you still need to pay attention, and you still need to know what good looks like. And there's all sorts of things you need to do to make sure it doesn't blow up your business. But it's way less than, October 2025. And so where do you put your effort? You could put it on uh, prompt engineering, or understanding the technical, like how does AI work. But you'd be better off just starting by having people start producing context for the business. And that's why the creation of these artifacts is so important, is it now turns whatever knowledge that exists in your business into actual machine readable things that look great to humans because it's in a presentation form that is, by the way, better than PowerPoint. It's like you would never want to do PowerPoint ever again if you could just do a landing page that explains everything you want with all of these cool visualizations, and data can be manipulated. Like, it's better as a human interface, but it's also way better as a machine interface. And so getting people cranking those out and then storing those in context is like job number one, I think, for 2026. And that's why we literally overnight created that new black belt training, which would show people how to do that. So I do, and again, because I've practiced talking on this stuff for hours for the last 3 years. I can sometimes forget the question, but I think the idea is we need to help companies move as fast as they can. And what you needed to learn in 2025 is not the same thing as what you need to learn in 2026. It's no longer the bottleneck. So you could focus all your energy on solving a problem that no longer exists, is my point. You don't want to do that. That'll just slow you down.
That's fair. I think the other big lesson that we learned was it we've tried this before too. Right? We've tried it a bunch of times. Right. We've evolved a whole bunch of times. And one of the other key factors that I believe helped us like brute force through some of this, right now it's easier. Right now we can show other people how it's easier, was that there's kind of like this new role evolving of AI ROI champion, for maybe the lack of a better word for that, but somebody that's operationally minded, somebody who's going to do follow through no matter how painful it is, right? That like somebody like that needs to take charge or lead the charge in implementing AI if they want to get ROI out of those implementations. Um, because I don't think I think like you're brilliant, right? And no, I think you're brilliant, but you have all these great concepts and you had a lot of foresight and you had a lot of future thinking about these things, but some of that was ahead of the tech, right? As we said yesterday, like in December, there's this big change. So we were still doing it before tech was ready to do it. Um, and we were even doing it before the tech and the people were ready to do it and kind of pulling through. And so I think one of those big insights is like someone has to have their pulse on the fact that 2025 was one way and 2026 success is another way. And that like you're not just talking about AI, but you're doing, right? You're doing purposeful work that's going to generate a return. Otherwise, X number of percent of implementations fail, right? So I think that's another big takeaway from that. There's stress in that. There's stress in the fact that the person that would be a good champion, a good implementer, often are also people who like process and like standardization, and they like things to be right, like known, because it's easier to scale repetitive things. But those repetitive things are what we're giving to AI now. So there is like this some new muscles that leaders, especially AI ROI champions, have to get um, for this to be successful. And it can be a challenge. I mean, particularly for me, I'm very process oriented. I'm very get her done minded, and it changed yesterday, right? Like, but but if you don't keep up with that, right? So there is this thought around how do we still make these people productive, right? Can't It's not just AI or ROI or AI productivity, but we have to reinvent the way that the humans show up and can be productive if they are going to also implement AI ROI effectively. Is my thought around that. I don't know if you have a perspective as well.
Um, I'm going to make a perspective up on the fly. I did well.
Awesome.
We've done these. We've trained organizations for the last like 2 years, right?
Yes.
And one of the things we found is we're mostly been viewing it as like we're training a group of people. And if you take any 10 people out of an organization and you put them into a group like this, some of them are going to struggle. Like I think there are two things that need to be true in order to make progress. And one is you need the ability to experiment. You need somebody who's just like, I don't care if I fail. I'm just going to try it and we're going to see if it works in the real world. And then if it works, we'll keep doing it. Which I is my like mode of operation. I'm very like, let's just try it. But you also need another mindset, which is we need to take what we learn and we need to like make sure we continue to do the things that are working and stop doing the things that are not. And that's those two things I think need to be true in an AI champion in order to get that done. And so I think it's a rare combination. And at the very least, you need if you don't have it in a single person, you need to make like a dyad. Like one person experiments, the other one makes sure like we operationalize what we're learning. And I think that's what you and I have done well. Is I'm very much like let's like I continue to need to learn the same lessons over and over and over again because I forget. I'm really focused on trying a new thing. Where you're and we're not 100% one way and 0% another way, but you're more slanted towards let's make this a repeatable process so that we can scale it. So I think on the fly, thinking through that, like if hit a reset button, like how would we change how we train organizations in 2026? It'd probably be hopefully you can find one person with both of those things. I think that's probably too rare of a trait set in order to be a reality in most organizations. You need to find one person who's process oriented. You need to find another person who's experiment uh, oriented or has a high level of agency, whatever term you want to use, and let them go to work. And that will ultimately be the right combination of the results because you're going to always push back on me on operational things. I'm always going to say we got to try this new thing, and I don't care how we do it. Um, but the combination of those two things means progress, and it's like yin and yang, chaos and order. Like it's a reality in the world. It's like you don't make progress without both of those two things existing. And so it's almost like if you try to take the experience of one person, it's like if it was just me, this would fail. If it was just you, or let's say
I would
kinder
also fail. Yeah,
kinder words,
actually,
like it wouldn't be as
yeah,
good, right? Like we wouldn't
right.
make as much progress if I was just off experimenting and we don't learn as an organization. In the flip side would be true is like I will run more experiments than you do, because that's my nature. So um but when we combine those two things together, that creates the progress. And I think we need to, and then this is maybe like the inside baseball talk. It's like we need to figure out how to identify those character traits and make a team. It's almost like pair programming, right? Like how two people together working on the same thing is better than one person um, alone.
So I would say so. What's interesting about that to me is that it parallels the idea of a couple of years ago when there was I made like pre 2020, right? There was a lot of investor funding out there for startups. And I started reading a lot of startup blogs because I like to create business plans for fun. And one of the interesting things that they had said was they would not invest in a new tech company if they didn't have a founder and a co-founder because they needed there to be the inspirational founder that had the energy to, decide that their holograms are going to exist in real life by tomorrow. And then they needed somebody to tell them, maybe not by tomorrow, but maybe next week, right? Like someone has to have these great experiments and ideas, and someone has to be able to do it or say no, or etc. But I don't know if it's a pushback, but I wonder what's interesting. I think that our organization, we needed both of those, but you're so forward thinking that you do run all the experiments. We break it all. And then when we share it after it just needs to be implemented. Right. So I think it's a little bit, I don't know if easier, because, I hate that word completely. But I think that like, because you are already experimenting like crazy all of the time. And a lot of our team, we actually force our team, right, to do new procedures every week and do experiments every week. But because we're doing that, we can then help the champions to implement because we broke it 72 times, three times, right? Right. So we've already done that. That's, I think, a beneficial part is if they can't find both, they really need someone that's going to get it done and do the work and push through. But they also need support from a visionary person in the org. it doesn't work if it doesn't come. I don't think it works if it doesn't come from both the top and the bottom.
Yeah, I think we agree. I think that's exactly what I'm saying is like there needs to be massive amounts of experimentation. There needs to be massive amounts of operationalization, and some things work and some things don't on both ends. And but treating it like a system that you're building to get continuously better over time is the right way to put it. This is not about the at the end of the day, this is not about AI. This is about making a better business. And how
Yes.
fast can your business experiment and find new and better ways of doing things? And the AI just goes into all of that. Like the other, I don't know if we were gonna talk about this, and so you can
Yeah.
cut it out if not.
No, go
But
for
the
it.
whole idea, like today, we had an issue with one of our systems, and in the past, I would just be like, okay, well, let me know when it's fixed, like with our developer in our team, and I today I was like, well, you got to get on a Zoom with me and we're going to do this together. And so we literally open up the AI, we walk through it. I forced our developer to explain to me what I was seeing on my screen that the AI said we should do next. I didn't like I ran it to the ground, and what we found out was that the AI made suggestions to us that the developer either wouldn't have tried or would have taken way longer to do because we are using the AI to do it. So there is, but not, then the question is, okay, and I had to force myself to do this. Like none of this is obvious until you're doing it. Like, well, how do we learn from this? Like, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And as I was talking to him, I walked through this idea. Like in the past, like what should happen is we do an incident report or a learning opportunity or whatever. Like somebody documents, like, here's what happened, here's the root cause, here's what we can do differently next time. Then let's make an SOP about it. And like before, we would just have too much stuff to do in order to do, and then that's got to go somewhere where the agent can see it. That those are all now possible within like minutes because I just recorded our conversation. I literally recorded the audio that had an interactive chat with it. I can just give it to the AI. It can produce the report. It can produce the updated SOP, at least the first draft. And like so, the those things are just now easier to do. The and now by tomorrow morning, hopefully, we will have a stronger company on January 7th than we had on January 6th. And so you can even use it to solve the problem, then also to make and that's now new great context for our business. So in the future, if that thing happens again, the AI knows immediately what happened and what the fix is, and the people know immediately what the fix is. So, um,
I think it's a great example. I'm glad you did set it very concrete because, like, we're a little more theoretical today than we will end up being normally as we're talking through real problems that we fix. Um, but I think what's so great about that is in doing that, you learned as a, personally, right, about some things. He learned about some things. And I actually came and talked to him later, right? Because I want to make sure we implement some of this parts of the process because I've been in tech for a long time. And then I was like, well, what about? Right? And those things were not necessarily captured by the AI. So it allows us to take a little bit more risk safely to get things done faster. And I think that makes experimentation um, like even doable. Like there are things that we would have never been able to finish doing in an entire year that now like I did yesterday for in a couple of hours. I was working through some stuff yesterday that I was struggling with. Um, so I, so that's what the AI Dojo is about, is really our company and how we're doing it and how we're fixing it and what we're putting together. And between yesterday and today, you literally this morning used that concept of generating an artifact that could be used as context, and we put that into our development pipeline. I put it in our system to make sure that it got done, and it's a to-do thing that we're going to be doing with some of the other things that we're doing. I would have never done that even a year ago. like the amount of resistance you would have got from me as a development person who has a software development cycle and things have to go all through these stage gates would have just been way too much for me to be able to like do, period, even make it through all the process parts. um but we did it, right? Like it even helped, I feel like it even helped us not panic that that system thing happened. It was like, oh, like a year ago we had something very similar happen and you and I were up all night long. It was like way early into the morning trying to solve this with the AI that was there then. This was a very similar thing and it was fixed by 8:30, notify 7:30. So I think that's the point, right? Is like that's a return on investment, right? That, or at least cost avoidance, if nothing else, that we would have never been able to do before.
Yeah,
So I think
and I
this,
think
go ahead.
like from the business owner perspective, it's like in the past, I would have felt helpless to do anything. I wouldn't know what questions to ask. I wouldn't know where to start. I literally know nothing about this problem. But now I know more than I did at 7:30 this morning. And I now know that our system is going to be better. And I know that I can ask the right questions and I can make the company stronger. So there's like an agency piece of this, which would be like peace of mind for a business owners. Like, and also there's a whole bunch of threads and we can go from like very theoretical down to like technical, like which buttons to press when we talk about this stuff. But this is like an enterprise value thing as well. If you document your business, like you're gonna sell it for more money, like by multiples more. But also we're building the power for these agents to do their work. And so problem solving almost becomes one of the most um, fruitful activities in the business. It's like you want problems. Let's just we're making a problem solving organism as a business that is powered as much as it can be by agents, and if not by agents, then non-subject matter experts enabled by AI, and if not that, at least a subject matter expert enabled with AI. Um, so I think there is more to ROI. I mean, maybe it's a way to think about this is like there's timelines of ROI. The timeline of ROI for the enterprise value, you're never going to create more enterprise value overnight. It's a long term thing you got to do consistently over and over again. And that's that. I think today, that example we just used as an example of that. There's probably a little bit of cost savings because the developer didn't work on it for 3 hours and worked on it for one. Um, but there's no like revenue ROI associated with it. Um, but there is a definite deposit into the enterprise value side of things for today. And I'll one last thing, and I don't know when we're gonna end this thing because this is our first one. So I think we're probably gonna
Yeah.
end it soon. I think one of the things we could do as a like leave behind for something to talk about again in the future, because one of the things that happens when you're doing all of this stuff is you continuously have new ideas for things. So one of the things I'm thinking about today is that so we use Basecamp as our project management software. The cost of building, like in theory, the cost of building a version of Basecamp would be very low. But we don't want to just rebuild Basecamp. But there's probably a way for us to build some project management tool that's way more AI friendly than Basecamp is. Because I'm thinking about like how do I want to know what happened inside of Basecamp, and I don't have time to go read it, but I would like a download of it and get it into AI and say, look, what happened today? And so I think there's even things like that where we can think about what do we do to build if production of context is the highest level activity we do in a business, would that change the way we do it? And I think the answer is yes. Like you could build an MCP server to go talk to Basecamp and suck information in, but maybe there's just a better way to rebuild how you do project management in the AI age. So I would like to talk about that at some point, and I'm sure that um, what you see in that is just a whole bunch of more work we need to do. But I think
Yeah.
it's at least an
Actually, I think
interesting
it's
thought
exciting.
exercise.
I actually think it's exciting. I'll answer that thought, and then I think there's something we can use to finish up, and we'll get back together next week to talk more about it. But I actually have thought about that. So I was like, I have a product and project management background. My master's degree is actually in technology project management. So I think of everything and how do we do it better and organize it better and all of this stuff. And I've literally thought like everything we have to, everything we do going forward must be different. And that leads into my last thought, like how we manage projects, how we manage our businesses, how we manage our people. If we're going to be the most effective as a combination of people and AI. But the biggest thought that I just thought of, and I don't know why I haven't got there till just now, is people will say, like, well, what should I do now? Right? Because agents aren't necessarily there and agents aren't necessarily ready. And I would agree that, like, we can't right now snap our fingers and have all the agents going immediately and have everything rebuilt. But the answer to that is right now you should be building the context. Right now you should be building the problem resolution engine, right? Right now you should be building the replacement for Basecamp because all of those things will be a prerequisite to an effective agent orchestration, no matter when the tech gets ready. And the great thing about that is even if the tech never got that good, you're still going to be adding enterprise value. So if that would be my leave behind for people. If you're like, well, what do I do? Like right now, what do I do? My answer would be begin to open up psychological safety for your group, allow them, encourage them to bring out the problems so that those problems and those solutions can be documented and then used as inputs for you, for what you will need to do to be able to compete when agents evolve or mature enough to be able to do that. So that would be my leave behind. Um, and that's part of what we're doing in the AI ROI Association is like, what are those processes? What are those procedures? What are those problems? And how, like, how do we begin this journey, especially when it's going so fast? And like, yeah, that would be my big takeaway. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, I think it was a great start. Looking forward
Awesome.
to doing it again.
Well, that is our episode then of the AI Dojo. We'll be back each week to share what we did, what we built, what we changed, what worked, and what didn't work. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today and welcome to the dojo.